I know. Whatever happened to the AMD 30-day challenge video? Am I right? Well, I'm back, I'm here, I'm ready to finish it. Honestly, it's more like a 60-day challenge video at this point because it's been so long, but that's okay because that has given me more time with the card and now I have more information to share. But you do deserve an honest update because together as a community, I switched over to the 9070 XT. I was given regular updates, uploading multiple videos a week, talking about my experience with the challenge with the 9070 XT along the way. We were live streaming and testing the card in real time together. And then I got close to the end of the challenge and I uploaded the 5060 review video and I dipped out and I needed a break. And I did see the comments on that video where people were asking, hey, well, what about the 9070 XT 30-day challenge? What's going on with that? I really want to see that video. And I'm going to be honest with you, not to get too personal or anything like that, but life kind of hit me in the face and I got burned out. I don't do YouTube full time. I would love to, but the money just isn't there, at least not yet. This is something I do part time. It's in addition to my main day job. It's in addition to my family and other responsibilities. And so I got burned out. The state of the world sucks right now. The state of tech really sucks right now. And honestly, unless you are some type of really large tech YouTuber, then you know, as a smaller tech YouTuber like myself, you're going to spend most of your Saturday and Sunday recording and editing a video just for YouTube not to push it, just for people not to see it. And it's very discouraging. But in the words of Heath Ledger's Joker, I'm a man of my word. And so I'm back to finish what I started because as much as I know about tech, I learned a lot from this challenge. I discovered there is a massive knowledge gap in the market when it comes to AMD GPUs. Most of the tutorials you look up for games or best settings for a game or how to set up this software or whatever, most of those tutorials are all based around NVIDIA GPUs. You have to specifically search out for AMD GPUs, and a lot of times you can't find it, or if you do, it's a really old video with older AMD hardware that is no longer relevant for your current use case. And so I decided, let me do the dirty work and let me try to provide as much information as I possibly can. The purpose of today's video is to figure out if AMD GPUs are a viable alternative to NVIDIA GPUs. Notice what I did not say. I did not say, are AMD GPUs better than NVIDIA GPUs? I did not say, should you buy an AMD GPU instead of an NVIDIA GPU? I'm just trying to figure out for the people looking to buy the AMD card, is it actually a viable alternative? In other words, I have every 50 series card back there on the shelf. If I did not have that, and if I was forced to only use a 9070 or 9070 XT, for example, could I get by with that card and make do with what I have? And honestly, that line of thinking is coming from you, the community, because I kept getting comments where people would say something along the lines of, I really want the 5070 Ti, but in my market, the 5070 Ti is hundreds of dollars more expensive than a 9070 XT, or the 5070 Ti is sold out, but the 9070 XT is available. Is it okay to buy that? And I felt very strange getting questions about that. People wanting me to give them permission to buy the card. Okay, why are so many people so hesitant to, to buy the AMD alternative? I saw a report recently that said NVIDIA has about 90% of the market share. Now, I don't know how true that is. 90% does seem like a lot, and we can debate all day long. It's 88%, but whatever, I don't care. We can all agree that NVIDIA is number one in the marketplace. And so I think that has some type of effect where if people are personally okay with buying the AMD alternative, or if they're in a position where they can only get the AMD alternative, they might not feel as if they should buy it because everyone around them has NVIDIA cards. And I can totally get that. And also, I think this meme really sums it up. Who thinks AMD is the better option? And everyone raises their hand. Who wants to buy a Radeon GPU? And then all the hands go down. And that is something that is honestly very accurate within the tech community. As a tech YouTuber, I see the comments all the time. Buy AMD, vote with your wallet, blah, blah, blah. And then you look at the market share of NVIDIA. You talk to your family and friends. You look at the Steam hardware survey, and it's all NVIDIA. And it makes you wonder, okay, where's all the AMD stuff going? Again, I'm not trying to debate NVIDIA versus AMD or anything like that. I'm honestly just trying to answer the question for people. Can they buy the AMD card and feel like they're going to be okay? The simple answer to everything is yes, but now let's talk about the nitty-gritty details. One more thing before we go any further. I don't have any bias here. This is not an AMD promo video. AMD has never worked with me. AMD still refuses to send me a sample. I've asked for it multiple times. They won't send me crap. NVIDIA won't send me crap. The only reason why I'm able to make this video is because of ASUS and them sending me the 9070 XT along with all the other GPUs. So I got to give a shout out there to ASUS for that. Outside of that, yeah, there's nothing here. No money has exchanged hands. ASUS has never paid me a dime. AMD, NVIDIA, none of them have ever paid me a dime. So I just want to make that clear, full disclosure up front. Now we need to talk about initial setup, and yes, I did have some issues, and I don't really know the root cause of the issues, but I'm going to tell you how it worked out for me. First of all, make sure you go and get DDU or display driver uninstaller, and make sure you uninstall your existing drivers, whether if that's AMD or NVIDIA. Make sure you uninstall the drivers and then restart your PC, and then get ready to install your brand new drivers. Now, in order to install your new AMD drivers, go to AMD's website. I do not recommend getting the package right there on their website for Adrenalin software. Instead, I recommend going through the configurator and choosing the package specifically for your dedicated GPU. So in my case, I chose it for the 9070 XT. And then from there, you just go through the normal setup process. Now, right away, unfortunately, I did run into this error where it gave me error 202 and it says AMD software install cannot proceed as a Windows update is currently in progress. Now, I already knew this was total bullcrap because I actually have my updates delayed using the Chris Titus Tech tool, so I knew there wasn't any type of automatic updates going on, but I decided to manually check just to make sure. And so I immediately switched over to the update panel and I was fully up to date. And so this error message was honestly total bullcrap, but I said, fine, whatever. So I closed it down, I restarted my PC one more time, and I went back through the setup process using the same installer package. Now, the good news is this time it did not give me error 202. The bad news is once I got into the Adrenalin software, everything was fine, but I was checking out the updates and seeing what else I could install because I really wanted to test out the entire AMD experience. And so I decided to install AMD Chat and give that a try. But unfortunately, it kept telling me, hey, you need to restart, you need to restart. Even after restarting, it kept telling me you need to restart. And I didn't see an easy way to just uninstall the chat and make the restart message go away. And so I went ahead and did DDU and uninstalled the AMD driver, rebooted the system, and started over again. Now, this time when I was going through the installation process for the Adrenalin software and the AMD driver, I noticed something I haven't noticed before. By default, it actually, resorts to default, but there is a drop-down menu there, and you can choose something called minimum. And I decided to give that a try. And I gotta be honest with you, this is what I recommend. This is giving you a de-bloated version of the AMD Adrenalin software. Now, a lot of people like all the features inside the software, and that's great. But if you're not gonna use all of those features, then definitely consider going with the condensed version here, because you still get the driver and you still get some of the features of the Adrenalin software, but it's not as bloated. And once I installed this, I had no issues. I didn't have any error 202s. I didn't have any, you need to restart messages or anything. It just worked. And this was something I never noticed before. If you're new to AMD or if you're coming back to AMD, definitely consider installing the minimum driver instead of doing the full Adrenalin package. In my opinion, I definitely think that is the way to go. Now, outside of that, I'm happy to report I had no other driver issues for the entirety of this challenge. That was it. I had no other issues, no crashes, no blue screens, no freezes, nothing. Everything worked without a hitch, totally fine. I'm dead serious about that. Just how I took screenshots and documented my initial setup issues and I shared that information with you, I was planning to do the exact same thing for any other related driver issues, but they never happened. They never occurred. But during this challenge, I definitely saw all the issues with the NVIDIA drivers and how NVIDIA had to roll back a driver because it caused so many issues for the NVIDIA cards out there for the 50 series. And so to me, that says the days of NVIDIA drivers good, AMD drivers bad are over. Those days are over. Sure, AMD can still put out a bad driver package just like NVIDIA can, but you're not necessarily guaranteed to get something better in terms of a driver delivery just because you're going with NVIDIA. That's not true anymore. It used to be true, but not anymore. And so I was kind of surprised by that. I was expecting a driver issue any day, but it never came. I never had any freezes or crashes or anything like that. So I just wanted to make that known. I think AMD's come a long way since I reviewed that 7900 XTX on launch. Now let's talk about daily usage. Now this will get more specific here in just a moment, talking about editing videos, recording and all that. But in terms of general desktop usage, I don't really have anything to complain about. It's fine. You can't really tell a difference whether if it's an AMD card or an NVIDIA card. It just does what it needs to do. I'm able to web browse totally fine. I'm able to access File Explorer and have all my file management processes work totally fine. The card in particular that I'm using is the Primo C from Asus, and the card definitely runs on the colder side and the quieter side of things. It almost never breaks 60C, and I can't hear it above my case fans. The case I have it in is the Height Y70 touch display. I don't recommend the case, by the way. Definitely overpriced and not worth it, but that's besides the point. It is a larger case, and so I definitely think it probably helps to mask some of the noise. But with that being said, inside the case, I can't hear it over the case fans, so it's definitely on the quieter side of things. Overall, I don't really have any issues. From a day-to-day general desktop usage standpoint, everything honestly just worked totally fine. But now let's get more specific, talking about my workflow. Obviously, I'm a tech YouTuber, so I record and edit videos and make thumbnails and all that. First of all, let me talk about thumbnail design. I use Affinity Photo in order to make thumbnails, and I'm happy to report that the 9070 XT worked totally fine with Affinity Photo. I didn't have any freezes or crashes or anything like that. It just worked totally fine, and I was able to make all of my thumbnails for the past 60 days now or whatever using the 9070 XT with no real limitations. Now let's switch over and start talking about something a little bit more complicated, and that is video production. My normal workflow is to use the 5090, go to OBS, use the AV1 encoder to record my videos, and then put those videos inside Davinci Resolve, and then edit, and then render out using the AV1 encoder, and then upload to YouTube. And so in order for me to say, yes, AMD GPUs like the 9070 and 9070 XT are viable alternatives to NVIDIA, I needed to be able to go through the exact same workflow with no issues. And I'm happy to report that AMD is a diamond partner with OBS. And so they pretty much have all the same features that NVIDIA does inside of OBS. That does mean that I'm able to take advantage of the 9070 XT's AV1 encoder and still record all my videos with the exact same video quality as the 5090 with no limitations. Now, I did not experience this, but I do want to share it in the spirit of transparency. I received one comment on one of my videos where the person claimed that their 9070 XT would not show the AV1 encoder inside of OBS. And then a few weeks later, Matt Miller PCs, who is another tech YouTuber, also contacted me claiming the same thing. His 9070 XT did not show the AV1 encoder inside of OBS. Now, for me, it works totally fine, and I've done a full video on this already showing my settings, and I will show them here right now. These are my recording settings inside of OBS using the 9070 XT, and you can see the AV1 encoder there. What I think is happening here is probably your standard software bug where you install something, it didn't quite install properly, and so there's a glitch and you need to uninstall and try again. Another thing you can do for anybody having this issue is to switch over to the Stream Elements version of OBS. I also did that as well. Initially, I was using the regular version of OBS. It was a fresh install. I did not install the 9070 XT and then just keep using the same OBS version I already had. I made sure to uninstall and reinstall OBS from scratch whenever I switched over to the 9070 XT, and the AV1 encoder showed up totally fine. But also later I got into live streaming, which we'll talk about more here in just a second. And when I did that, I discovered that Stream Elements offers their own version of OBS, which is mostly the same with like one or two minor tweaks on it. And I switched over to that version, and also the AV1 encoder showed up totally fine inside that version of OBS as well. So those are a few tips and tricks if you're having that problem. But for me, I did not have that problem and everything worked totally fine. Now, from video recording, we have to go into video editing. So now let's start talking about video editing. Now, the reason why I use Davinci Resolve is for two reasons. Number one, you can use it completely for free if you want. And number two, if you prefer the premium version of the software to get a few extra features, then it is a one-time payment for a lifetime license. You do not have to pay an ongoing monthly fee like you do with Adobe. So I do apologize. I cannot speak to Adobe. I was not able to test it. I do not use Adobe. I only use Davinci Resolve, and those are my reasons why. With that being said, with Davinci Resolve, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. There are some pros and cons here. So for the most part, in terms of editing, everything's totally fine. And you can produce a high quality video. If you look at any video on my channel from the last 60 days, most of them, almost all of them, have been produced using the AMD Radeon RX 9070 XT with OBS and Davinci Resolve. With that being said, there were some noticeable issues. I'm showing some footage right now on the screen. You can see that there were definitely some weird glitches or hitches or something going on with Davinci Resolve while using the 9070 XT and while I was scrubbing my timeline. And this definitely happened more often early on in the challenge process. The past couple of weeks or whatever, this really hasn't happened at all. So I don't know if maybe a driver update fixed it or if maybe a Davinci Resolve update fixed it. But early on, I did have a few issues like this. And honestly, in those situations, all you have to do is close down Davinci Resolve, open it back up, and boom, the issue is fixed. Finally, there is the video production side of it where you actually produce the video, you render it out and upload it to YouTube. Now, again, using my 5090, what I would do there is I would just use the AV1 encoder, render out, upload. That's the end of it. I never really had to do any other research. Just choose the video resolution and choose the encoder and you're done. With AMD, it is a little bit more involved. When I initially tried to export out a video using the GPU, no matter what I tried, no matter what the encoder was, it could have been H.265, it could have been AV1, it did not matter. The video came out every single time with those audio video desync issues. It took me a while. It took me a long while to get the solution to this. There are basically no forums out there that have this solution that I'm about to show you. I Googled this like there was no tomorrow. There were no subreddits or anything that could actually give me information that fixed this issue. The way I fixed it was by talking with ChatGPT. I was able to share screenshots and say, hey, look, I'm using an AMD Radeon RX 9070 XT GPU. I'm using Davinci Resolve. And whenever I produce videos, the audio and video is desyncing. I would like to use the AV1 encoder. Please help me figure out what settings to use. And these are the settings it told me to use. And immediately after applying these settings, everything was fixed. All my problems went away. I was able to produce a video using the AV1 encoder with no audio or video desync issues of any kind. And so if you would like to use an AMD Radeon RX 9070 XT with Davinci Resolve, and if you would like to export videos with high quality using the AV1 encoder, these are the settings I would recommend using. And I hope that helps you out in one way or another. Let me know if you got any comments down below in the comment section. Now let's move on and talk about live streaming. I knew that I wanted to live stream on the channel, and let's be honest, we all know that NVIDIA cards can live stream totally fine. You got the NVENC encoders, now you got the AV1 encoders. Using the 5090 to live stream is not going to be a problem. So I was genuinely curious, how would the live streaming go using the AMD card? And again, there are some pros and cons here. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. So let's talk about the negative side first. The negative side is that, unfortunately, because it is an AMD card, it doesn't have as much support as an NVIDIA card. And the best example I have to show you of this is a new streaming software called Meld Studio. Now, Meld is marketing itself as a one-stop shop, easy to use, all-in-one streaming software. And honestly, getting back into live streaming, I was looking for something that was easy and simple, and I just wanted to plug and play, push a button, go live. I didn't really want to have to do a lot of custom setup. This sounded like something that would have been perfect for me. And I downloaded Meld Studio and I tried to use it and I couldn't because it does not support AMD GPUs. It only supports NVIDIA GPUs. And the reason why I know that is because going through it, it clearly told me that the hardware encoder was simply not available. Whatever, stop being lazy. Let's just go all in with OBS. OBS, yeah, it requires more work, but it also allows you to set up a more involved stream. And so I switched back over to OBS. I got the Stream Elements version of it, and I set up my live stream and I started streaming. And once I started streaming, I tested the AV1 encoder for a whole stream, and then I tested the H.265 encoder for an entire stream, and both of them ran totally fine. The stream ran great. I didn't have any drops or lag or anything like that. Audio was good. Video was good. I even made full videos on my channel talking about the experience. And at first I just went live to to just stand there and talk to people and see what it looked like. And it looked great and it sounded great. But then people wanted me to raise the bar, right? So then I went live again and I played a game while streaming. And playing a game while streaming, it ran fine. It sounded fine. No drops or anything like that. So then I took it a step further and I went live and I launched the game and played a game. And then I recorded the gameplay and the live stream all at the same time, all while using the AV1 encoder on the 9070 XT. And it ran fine and it sounded fine. So in short, I really tested the 9070 XT and its live streaming capabilities. And no matter how much I was throwing at it, I couldn't get it to break. We even had alerts going off because people were very generous and they were subscribing and donating money and all that stuff. And so with the alerts going off and the gameplay going and music going, and I was recording it all at the same time, it held up like a champ. I mean, it was just as good as any NVIDIA GPU I've ever used because I did use the live stream with the 3070 back in the day, and that was totally fine. And this was just as good, if not better, in every way. So I got to give AMD their props there from a live streaming standpoint. The only downside there is that, again, not as much support out there. You know, you have something like Mel Studio, which sure is brand new and it's a little bit more niche, but as you can see, they chose to favor the NVIDIA hardware because that is the most commonly used hardware. So if you are going with AMD, you can have a high quality stream that runs well and looks really good, but it might require a little bit more setup on your end. And so that's the downside there. Next up, I want to talk about app development. Now, I don't really talk about this much on the channel, but I want to put it out there. I do have a bachelor's degree in computer information systems. I do have a history in software engineering and database development. And at my day job, I am a software engineer. And I'm no master by any means at all, but I know enough to be dangerous and I know enough to get my job done and to get paid. So there's that at least. But I wanted to take these skills that I have and start applying it here to the channel. After all, it is a tech channel, and something I've always wondered about is why so many channels very rarely actually offer their own tech. It's usually like, hey, here's a store, come buy a t-shirt and a mouse pad. And I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying it's not a lot of value there. And so something I've been super passionate about is building a game launcher that's kind of like a console interface for PC gamers. And so that way you can sit on your couch, use a controller, use your PC in the living room, but have a console UI, or even just use it at your desk if you want. And with that being said, I already have one version of it out there that my Patreon members are using called eArcade. But recently I really went down the rabbit hole and really brought my vision to life. And I started to recreate the Xbox 360's NXE dashboard. And for the most part, it's almost completely done. And I built the whole thing using the 9070 XT. I worked with different AI models. I added my own assets and stuff like that. And I ran it on my local machine and did multiple different testing phases with it. And it was all with the 9070 XT. And I had zero issues. With that being said, I was able to build this app and it will be coming very soon here to the channel. So stay tuned for that. If you're interested in it, subscribe, turn on notifications, you know, all the things. Now let's move on to talk about gaming. So I'm not going to do a bunch of benchmarks or anything like that. I've already done that here on the channel with the 9070 XT. There's a full dedicated review on that. And not only do I have a video on it, so does everybody else. So if you're just interested in raw benchmark numbers, you can watch my other video. I'll have that pop up here. What I was more concerned with is the capabilities within gaming and the limitations I might hit while gaming. And so an example of that is whenever I first announced this challenge, I started getting people coming to the comments telling me, I can't play God of War. I can't play Tomb Raider. I can't play, I think it's called Assetto or something, the racing game. So what I wanted to do is go through and start launching these games, both new and older, and just see, okay, can I launch the game? Can I play it for a few minutes? And do I have any crashes or anything like that? Because some of the comments I was getting was indicating that people couldn't even launch the game. And so I would ask questions like, well, you know, are your drivers up to date? Are you sure it's the GPU itself, etc.? And sometimes I was able to help people figure it out, and sometimes I just didn't get a response. But what I can tell you for sure is that a lot goes into preventing games from launching. A prime example is I'm using the 9950X 3D, and I am using Process Lasso. And I've done multiple videos about that here on the channel as well. And if you set CPU affinities for your games, you can ensure you're getting the maximum performance in those games by going through that process. However, there are some games that do not respond well to CPU affinities. affinities. And a game like that would be Dead Island 2, for example. I've been playing a lot of Dead Island 2 with some friends recently. I noticed that I didn't have a CPU affinity set for it, so I set it up with my 9950X 3D, and then I tried to relaunch the game, and it would not open. And as soon as I turned that off, it worked. So while CPU affinities with process lasso on CPUs like the 9950X 3D are usually good and usually lead to better gaming performance, there are some outliers where it actually causes a problem, Dead Island 2 being a prime example. And I'm not saying that that's what everybody else's issues are whenever it comes to not being able to launch a game. I'm just trying to illustrate the fact that so much goes into launching a game, from DRM to updates and things of that nature. It's not always just the GPU issue. With that being said, here are some games that I downloaded, I installed, I opened, I played through for a few minutes, just to confirm, yes, you can play this game, it launches, it doesn't crash, and it is possible to play through it. So first of all, God of War 2018, here's footage of that right here. You can see that's running totally fine, no issues. Whenever the person told me they couldn't open God of War, they didn't really specify if it was the first version or Ragnarok. So I went ahead and ran the first version, and then I switched over to Ragnarok and I ran that as well. And as you can see, that's running here totally fine as well. And I knew this would not be a problem because I already ran this on the 9070 XT using my dedicated benchmark video all the way back when the 9070 XT first came out. And then I switched over to Tomb Raider. Now again, I don't know exactly which Tomb Raider was not able to launch for this other person, but this is the only one I have, and it goes all the way back to 2013, so I think we can all agree this is a very old game. And as you can see, the game's running totally fine. It doesn't have any issues. The frame time graph looks great. I'm able to launch it and play through the opening sequence with no issues. From there, I switched over to this Assetto game, I think is how you say it. I'm not into racing games at all. I am terrible at this, so this gameplay footage is awful, but I just downloaded the game and I wanted to launch it. And as you can see, my gameplay is terrible. I cannot drive at all, but the game is playable on the 9070 XT. From there, I went over to Alice Madness in Chains. Again, this is a really old game. This game came out all the way back on the Xbox 360. It is a very, very old game. And as you can see, the 9070 XT is able to launch it, play it totally fine with no issues. And of course, if we start playing games like Battlefield 6, which is something that did have issues with the 9000 series AMD Radeon GPUs back when the beta was out, you can see now that Battlefield 6 works totally fine with the 9000 series cards. Everything's working totally fine. FSR 4 works, and even frame generation works here. And I know we're not supposed to use frame generation in multiplayer games, but I wanted to test it and see if it would work, and it does work, and the feature is available for you. Switching over to Call of Duty Cold War. It's not the newest Call of Duty by a long shot, but it's also not terribly old either. As you can see, the game runs totally fine. We even live stream this on my channel with the community, and we play through a few matches, and everything worked totally fine with no issues. The noticeable downside here, though, is that Cold War does have DLSS support for NVIDIA cards, but it does not have FSR support, unfortunately. Here's Batman Arkham Asylum, running totally fine on the 9070 XT. I played through the opening sequence of that. It launched and it ran with no issues. Here's Batman Arkham City. Again, similar situation. It also works fine, no issues. I also tried indie titles like this Abyssus game, and it runs great as well. I played through this with a friend of mine with no issues. And I already mentioned it, but I'll talk about it again. Dead Island 2. My entire playthrough of Dead Island 2 has been on the 9070 XT. And honestly, Dead Island 2 is not a game that's really well optimized by any stretch of the imagination. It runs pretty rough, no matter if you're on NVIDIA hardware or AMD hardware, but I was able to still play it with no issues and have a really good time with my friend. Yeah, I do need to turn on FSR in order to really get the frame rate under control, but still, FSR is available in the game and it does work with no issues. Here is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 running on the 9070 XT. Again, everything just works. No complaints here. It launches fine. It plays fine. Here is Hogwarts Legacy running on the 9070 XT. Running around Hogsmeade, no issues here. Everything just works. And finally, here's Resident Evil 4. I know it's not the latest and greatest Resident Evil out there. It is still a Resident Evil title. It's very popular. It's not that old. And again, as you can see, the 9070 XT is running it totally fine. Look, I'm going to be honest. I was kind of hoping for a game that I could show you that doesn't work, because that might be a little bit more interesting than me standing here saying I launched the game. It ran fine, as you can see, no problems. It runs totally fine. Like, that's boring. It's boring to film. It's boring to watch. I mean, it's informative, but let's be honest, it's boring, right? But if I was like, hey, this game doesn't work, it's a little bit more interesting. And honestly, there's more games I tried that I did not list, but they also did not fail. And I didn't list them just because this video is already super long and I don't want to give you 100 games or 50 games or whatever. It's just going to take forever. Now, the one downside here is that if you are really big into ray tracing and path tracing specifically, you don't want to get a 9070 XT. You're going to want to get NVIDIA. NVIDIA is better at ray tracing, especially at path tracing. Yes, AMD is better than they've ever been before at ray tracing, but they're still behind NVIDIA. And if you go to something like Cyberpunk and if you enable path tracing, technically you can turn it on, but the performance is not that great. And yes, you definitely have to rely on FSR and frame generation in order to have a decent experience in that game.
Hey, editing E-Rock here, and I just said you need frame generation and FSR to have a decent experience with path tracing. Yeah, even with those technologies in Cyberpunk and using path tracing, you're not going to have a decent experience. As you can see right here, this is pretty rough. Anyway, I just wanted to correct that before somebody else did in the comment section. If you're still watching, you're a rock star. Thank you.
Now let's talk about what I think is holding AMD back. And if I'm going to be honest with you, I really think it comes down to just being the second option. It's really that. Go back to Meld Studio, for example. Meld Studio, you have this small dev team or whatever coming into the market saying, hey, we want to offer something new, but we're limited on resources. We can only focus on one or the other. They automatically defaulted to NVIDIA because NVIDIA has the majority of market share. That is not a unique situation. That happens a lot because developers have a limited amount of resources. They cannot always program for everything on the market. So with that being said, if you can only go after one fish, you're going to go after the biggest fish in the pond. And that's going to be NVIDIA because that's going to give them the biggest slice of the pie. And that makes a lot of sense. And so unfortunately, if you're an AMD user, sometimes that means there's just some tools that are not at your disposal, or they're going to come later down the road. Another thing that I think holds AMD back is they don't really have that exclusive feature that makes you want to use them over NVIDIA. Now, I'm going to sit here and tell you straight up, I don't think exclusives are good in any way, shape, form, or fashion. I love the fact that Xbox games are now on PC, and I love the fact that PlayStation games are now on PC, although they're talking about not doing that anymore, which I think is lame. Exclusivity doesn't help the consumer, it only helps the company. With that being said, though, if you're in AMD's position and if you're trying to legitimately compete against the bigger company, which is NVIDIA, unfortunately, you have to meet them where they are. If they're going to have exclusive features that locks people into their system, you have to figure out what your thing's going to be. And AMD doesn't really have that on their GPUs. So I think that honestly is something that holds them back. Finally, everything AMD does offer, NVIDIA also offers, but also NVIDIA is a step ahead. For example, AMD has the best ray tracing they've ever had, but NVIDIA is still better at ray tracing. AMD now has frame generation, but NVIDIA is now on multi-frame generation, and now they're about to come out with dynamic frame generation. And AMD is still working on just the first version of frame generation. So it's stuff like that that I think really holds AMD back. Also, you have things like, yeah, AMD offers more VRAM for the dollar, but NVIDIA's VRAM is faster. Now, we can debate all day long how relevant that is or not, but there always seems to be that little trade-off on the AMD side of things. And honestly, I think it's all those points of consideration combined with the whole herd mentality of, well, all of my friends have NVIDIA and all the YouTubers have NVIDIA, so I need to buy NVIDIA. I think all of those factors are the reason why that more people flock over to NVIDIA. Because if you think about it, it can't just be about the money. Because if it was honestly always only about the money and value proposition, then AMD would be selling like hotcakes. But there are people out there who will literally go and spend $250, $300 more for a 5070 Ti over a 9070 XT simply because it's NVIDIA. Those people exist. I'm not saying, they're right for doing it. I don't agree with it. I'm just saying they exist, and I'm just trying to figure out why things like that happen. With all that being said, this was a very long video. I'm exhausted. My voice is starting to go out. So let me finish out this outro. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found some value here. I was trying to be fair and objective as much as I possibly could be during this video. And I hope you learned something. And thank you for hanging out with me during this challenge. Thank you for coming to the live streams. We'll definitely be doing more live streams here on the channel. And if you have more challenges you want me to do, let me know in the comment section down below. Definitely leave some comments about tips and tricks and even problems you may be having around AMD so that we can all come together and help each other out in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, do me a favor, hit that like button, get subscribed, and until next time, E-Rock out.